Hello, and welcome back to Katie and James. In this section, we want to talk with you about some inconvenient truths that are being covered up, denied, or ignored, and killing trust with employees. We represent nobody. Our interests are with you. So here are some truths based on our synthesis of analyses and studies from all over the world. Truth number one, breakthrough infections are a reality. Many of you are worried about bringing COVID back home to unvaccinated children and immune-compromised relatives and friends. You're right to be worried. Studies out there confirm that those of us who are vaccinated, that the effectiveness against breakthrough infection is just 39%. Most of us will suffer breakthrough infections as our vaccine immunity declines and new variants emerge.
Truth two, we don't know the health implications of having had long COVID or having had COVID multiple times. Now, in terms of having it multiple times, it's a little early yet for studies to emerge on that. We are beginning to see some with health workers, which suggest whilst you won't be hospitalized, you may still suffer long COVID symptoms. Long COVID. And I think as I speak about this, I really want you to think about the stance your HR or leadership are taking on long COVID. Now, studies are emerging on that. There was one published by The Lancet right now at the end of August. It was based on a 12-month study in China of 1-year COVID survivors against a control group. Well, lo and behold, 50% at 12 months had sleep difficulties, heart palpitations, joint pain, chest pain, fatigue, and muscle weakness. 1 year on, the majority of them had problems either with mobility, pain, discomfort, or anxiety or depression. So long COVID is really real. And I know, James, you've had long COVID. So would you share something about that experience?
Yes, Katie, it is real. I had COVID earlier this year and consequently developed deep vein thrombosis and pulmonary embolisms in both of my lungs. I had to receive treatment at the Royal Free Hospital in London. I'm still on blood thinners today, and I know that I'm not up to my fitness level that I was pre-COVID when I go to the gym.
And it's not just sort of oldies, James and I are clearly oldies in some regard compared to some of you, but we know young people like you who have suffered, are suffering from long COVID symptoms and have even been signed off by the company doctor for 2 or 3 weeks. And those symptoms are both physical and mental. Now, another point I want to raise, it's a bit of a sad point to raise in my view, but there seems to be a slippery slope some HR departments are going down. Monitoring of breakthrough infections or new infections of COVID. Most workplaces who have called people back into the office are monitoring the rate of infections. I mean, typically it seems to be being done by department or by office floor. So we know of some cases where people have tested positive having had the vaccine, so it's a breakthrough infection, and they've sent in, as requested, their positive test result to HR, along in one particular case with 2 team members. They all had breakthrough infections together, which suggest perhaps that they'd all got this infection back at work. But they then go to look at the reporting data and it's not included. And that alarms James and I that there are cover-ups going on. Truth 3, our mental health has suffered, and we can look at gazillions of studies actually from around the world on this. The Lancet had a mental health working party and they studied over 1,000 studies on mental health. But I want to share with you now some data of what's going on in the UK and US. So this is the UK, and it's looking at depressive symptoms, and you can quickly see there the jump up from 10% to just shy of 20% as the early months of the lockdown took place, and that has stayed steady, right? So that's the important. It doubled and it stayed steady. Now, if we look at the US, it's even more dramatic. I'm using data here from the Kaiser Family Foundation, and they're using government data to produce these slides. But you see symptoms of anxiety and or depression jumping from 11% to 41%. So that's, I mean, a dramatic increase. You can see the split here, and anxiety somewhat ahead of depression, which I think anecdotally, I would say feels right to me. It is age skewed. So I think this is very, very interesting. So obviously many of leadership perhaps at that topper age range, but many millennials, in fact, pretty much all millennials in the workplace, we're seeing much higher increase of anxiety and depression. And it is also related to race and ethnicity. So you see here higher incidence of depression, anxiety among our Black and brown colleagues. So rates of mental health, particularly depression, anxiety, shot right up. But it's not just that. Because they've shot right up, it can be difficult to access mental health. I know right here on the East Coast, it's difficult actually to find a therapist or counsellor right now, but also it's the cost, and cost prevents certain people. And then, of course, there's some felt stigma in some cultures about doing that too. So are we getting the mental health support we need? Are you getting the mental health support you need from leadership at work?
Truth 4, labor productivity is rising while we're working from home. Study after study indicates that productivity has increased markedly during the pandemic. An analysis by Great Place to Work surveyed 715 companies, 3 million employees, and reported both increased productivity and engagement. Didn't we all work harder than we ever had during the COVID period, becoming pajama bottom, stylish shirt slaves to our computers? Just as the 80 employees from Apple wrote in an open letter to the CEO, Tim Cook, back in June, our products and our services, the quality of these hasn't been diminished and is as good as ever while we're working remotely. No wonder we all feel angry about this. Productivity is rising at its fastest rate for more than 20 years, and it's accelerating. Absenteeism in the pandemic was down 40%. And just to quote Harvard Business Review this week, don't force people back to the office full time. We agree. Forcing human beings back to the office against their wishes has consequences, and we know companies are claiming lost productivity as an argument to force people back to the office.
Truth 5. Why would they be forcing you there? Well, truth 5 is cost of attrition can kill businesses, and we know people are quitting, and they're quitting in large numbers, and we're seeing those numbers go up and up and up for the kinds of white collar office jobs that James and I look at. Indeed, we know in certain departments it's running as high as 20%, and this costs money. So the typical statistic we take in HR is 33% of annual comp. So you just have to calculate that times the number of leavers, and you're talking about an awful lot of dough. Now, it's not just the person leaving. You have to look at the time it takes to hire. And there's an important statistic there that I used to monitor closely when I was the head of HR, which is days to hire, because days to hire matters because of the lost productivity in that time. But also it takes up, of course, management time in interviewing, and then there's the cost of training up when people get back. So all of that really adds to the amount of money. Now, what we are seeing is a bidding war going on in an attempt to bring this attrition down, certainly in financial services. It's playing out on social media, which James and I have been watching with interest. And it seems to be this feeling that I must match the others and that money is going to keep people with me. which is dubious. And we want to point again to the work of Dan Pink, which is now decades old. Never mind going back to Maslow, that money alone is not going to do it. So, truth 5, cost of attrition can kill businesses, but it is not just attrition, disengagement. So what we're seeing, and Gallup, I think, rightly reframed it, that it's not just the great age of resignations in 2021, it's the great era of discontent, because more employees are either less engaged or actively disengaged with their workplace. And this costs money too. And the numbers are really, really, I mean, shockingly high in my view. I mean, Gallup, very reputable, as we know, 2021 survey in US and Canada. Well, between 20 and 30% of us are engaged, and the rest of us, 70 to 80% of us are less engaged or disengaged. How much does that cost? Number there, 18% of comp. So start getting out your pens or calculators and you can start calculating it for your company. So if we take a company of 5,000 employees, average comp of $100,000, that's over 60 million a year. Do the numbers for your company. It is really powerful. Money always talks.
And what we know, Katie, truth number 7, quitting your job is trending. Just recently, Bloomberg surveyed nearly half of workers who said under the age of 40 that they would be leaving their jobs unless their employer allowed them to continue working from home, at least part-time. PricewaterhouseCoopers found that 65% of employees are looking for a new job, and 88% of employers are seeing higher turnover than normal. Monster.com found 95% of employees they surveyed were thinking of quitting. So basically, it's everywhere. There's lots of evidence of people quitting and money being thrown around, and much of this is on social media. What was previously thought to be confidential information on things like working conditions or pay and bonuses, that's all now freely traded on Instagram. The information circulated is confirmed by multiple sources, and the press monitor this for some really juicy headlines as well. So Katie, what do we advise on these inconvenient truths?
4 things, James. Number 1, make a list of them for your company. Right, just get them down, whatever you think, whether they're some of our 7 or others, make a list. Number 2, decide on one of them. We can't fight battles on every front. So decide the one you think is the one should be worked on in your company and get together the evidence around that. Bad's in our long blog, but you'll find others. But amass the truth as you see it, the facts around your one inconvenient truth. Number 3, present that to leadership. Find a way to present it. Do it as we've said many times. Take it up the hierarchy. But you've got to say, you're saying this, but actually it's this. Look at the facts. And number 4, raise on social media. We are really excited by what we see going on there. And we'd love to see more of what you think are the inconvenient truths, because this is a place that gets listened to, the media picks it up and has influence on employers. So those are our 4 things. Next up, in the next section, we're going to be talking about, well, what if you are at a tipping point? What if you do want to quit? What to do? So stay with us.
See you then.